All right, let's talk about the U.S. national debt. I know, you hear that number thrown around constantly, and it's so huge it kind of just goes in one ear and out the other, right? But what if I told you that you, your pension fund, and even entire countries are all tangled up in this story? Today, we're going to follow the money and find out exactly who America owes. There it is. $39 trillion. It's the single largest pile of government debt on the entire planet. But honestly, a number that big, it's just a headline. The real story, the one that actually affects all of us, comes down to a much simpler question.
Yeah, exactly that. Who is actually holding the IOU for this absolutely colossal sum? I mean, is it other countries? Is it big banks? Or could it even be, well, us? That's what we're about to break down.
So let's crack open the books. Think of it like the world's most complicated, most gigantic credit card statement. We're going to trace where the money's coming from and see who exactly the U.S. has been borrowing from all this time.
And this graphic right here is gonna be our guide. It does an amazing job of mapping out the entire $39 trillion, and we're gonna use it to walk through all the different layers of who owns what.
Okay, so the first thing you really got to get is that this debt isn't just one giant IOU. Nope, it's actually split into two very different categories. The huge slice, over 80%, is public debt. That's money owed to investors and the public. But let's start with that smaller and frankly much stranger slice, intragovernmental debt. So what in the world is this? Well, it's basically money the government owes to itself. You see, trust funds like Social Security sometimes bring in more in taxes than they pay out in benefits. So what do they do with the extra cash? They invest that surplus in special U.S. Treasury securities. It's like the government is giving itself a super safe IOU. So yeah, it's borrowing from its own piggy bank. And this internal IOU is not a small amount. We're talking $7.6 trillion. To give you some scale, that's about double the combined wealth of the planet's top 20 billionaires. It's an incredible amount of money for one part of the government to owe another. And now for the main event, public debt. This is the $31.4 trillion that's owed to everybody outside the federal government. This is the number that moves markets, this is what influences your mortgage rate, and it's at the very heart of the political debate. And this right here is probably the biggest surprise for most people. When you ask, who owns America's debt? The answer is Americans. Yep, U.S. individuals, our pension funds, state and local governments, they hold a staggering $17.7 trillion. That's nearly double the amount held by every other country in the world combined. Which brings us to a huge question, one you hear about all the time. Should we be worried about other countries holding so much of America's debt? Let's try and separate the fact from the fear here. You know the concern, right? The idea that some foreign power could hold the U.S. economy hostage. But the data shows a different picture. All foreign nations, all together, hold less than a quarter of the total debt. Now, it's a big piece of the puzzle, for sure, but it is far from the whole story. And if we look at who those foreign holders are, it's pretty revealing. Japan is at the top of the list, followed by the UK. For decades, investors in these countries have seen U.S. debt as one of the safest investments in the world, a secure place to park their cash. China comes in at number 3, holding around $700 billion. And here is the absolute kicker that puts it all into perspective. America's own central bank, the Federal Reserve, holds $4.4 trillion in Treasury securities. You know what that means? That's more than Japan, the United Kingdom, and China combined. Just that one fact completely changes how you have to think about this whole foreign ownership debate, doesn't it? Okay, so we've looked at the who and the what, but now for the question that really matters. How does this gigantic mountain of debt actually affect your day-to-day life and your wallet? It really boils down to 3 main pressures. First up is crowding out. Think about it. Every single dollar the government spends just paying interest on its debt is a dollar it can't spend on fixing roads, funding research, or other national priorities. Second, a heavy debt burden can kind of act like a brake on the economy, which can mean slower wage growth over time. And finally, and this is the one you feel most directly, it can push up interest rates. That means more expensive mortgages, car loans, and credit card debt for all of us. And the clock is absolutely ticking on this.
Right now, the debt is growing at a mind-boggling pace, about $1 trillion every 90 days. So this isn't some static problem, it's an accelerating one, and that frantic pace just keeps the pressure on everything we just talked about. So, the real $39 trillion question isn't just who do we owe, but how are we ever going to pay for it? Understanding who holds the IOUs is the first crucial step. But as this number continues its relentless climb, the debate over what it all means for our economic future, well, that's really just getting started.